Picture this with me. It's 6 a.m. on a crisp morning in New York City, and Sarah, a kind-hearted executive who always puts others first, watches from her office window as her colleague Tom strides into the building. Tom, who just took credit for her groundbreaking project last week, has just been promoted to senior vice president. Sarah's hands tremble as she holds her coffee cup, fighting back tears of frustration. She's wondering the same thing many of you are wondering right now. Why do toxic people seem to get ahead while good people struggle? Let me tell you something that might shake you to your core. Your goodness isn't what's holding you back. It's your misunderstanding of what true power looks like in our world. And today, we're going to unravel this mystery together, but I warn you, some of what I'm about to share might make you uncomfortable. Because the truth, my friends, often does. I've spent decades studying human behavior, watching patterns unfold in boardrooms and living rooms across America, and I've noticed something fascinating. We've been telling ourselves a story, a fairy tale really, about success and karma and getting what we deserve. But life isn't a Disney movie, is it? We've all seen it. The office bully who becomes CEO, the manipulative colleague who lands the promotion, the toxic friend who seems to have everything working out perfectly. You know what I'm talking about? The person who makes your stomach churn when they walk into a room. The one who seems to fail upward, who breaks promises without consequence, who steps on others and somehow rises higher with each step. They're like Teflon. Nothing bad sticks to them while you're over here following all the rules, being considerate, putting others first, and wondering why your goodness isn't being rewarded. Let me share a story about Michael, a brilliant researcher I met in 1985. Michael discovered a groundbreaking treatment for a rare disease, but he was too humble to aggressively promote his findings. He believed his work would speak for itself. Meanwhile, his colleague Robert, who contributed minimally to the research, began presenting the findings as his own at medical conferences. Within a year, Robert became the face of the breakthrough, landed a 7-figure book deal, and was featured on national television. Michael remained in his lab, bitter and confused. But here's where it gets interesting. Michael's story doesn't end there. What he learned and what I'm about to share with you transformed not just his career, but his understanding of success itself. Because you see, toxic people aren't succeeding despite their toxicity. They're succeeding because they understand certain fundamental truths about human nature that good people often ignore or deny. Think about water for a moment. When you're standing in a river, do you notice how the water doesn't fight the rocks? It flows around them. It finds the path of least resistance while never losing its essential nature. It remains water, pure, life-giving, essential, while still moving forward. This is the first profound truth we need to understand. Being good doesn't mean being passive. Being pure doesn't mean being powerless. The toxic people you know, they've intuited something crucial about human nature. They understand that success often comes not to those who deserve it, but to those who pursue it with unwavering clarity. They've grasped that the world responds to certainty more than it responds to merit. They know that confidence, even when misplaced, is more compelling than competence that hides in the shadows. But here's what they don't know, and this is where your journey to transformation begins. They don't understand that their success, built on shifting sands of manipulation and fear, has an expiration date. They don't realize that true. Lasting power comes from a different source entirely. I remember sitting with a CEO in 2012, a man who had built $1 billion empire through what many would consider toxic behavior. He looked at me with tired eyes and said something I'll never forget. I've won every battle, but I think I've lost the war. He had success, yes, but he had no allies. He had power, but no peace. He had achievements, but no genuine achievements. He had reached the top of a mountain only to find himself completely alone. This is where we begin to turn the corner in our understanding. The success of toxic people isn't a failure of the universe's moral compass. It's a misreading of what success actually means. These toxic individuals aren't actually succeeding more than good people. They're just succeeding more visibly in the short term. When you plant a bamboo seed, nothing appears to happen for the first 4 years. Not a single shoot breaks through the soil. The farmer who plants bamboo must water and nurture what appears to be empty earth, while around them other crops sprout and flourish within weeks. But what's happening beneath the surface during those 4 years? The bamboo is building an elaborate root system that will eventually support its massive growth. When it finally breaks through the surface, it can grow up to 90 feet in just 6 weeks. Good people are like bamboo farmers. They're building something profound and lasting, something that toxic people, in their rush to immediate gratification, can never achieve. The toxic person's success is like annual crops, but quick to sprout, quick. But yours is bamboo's success, deeply rooted, ultimately unstoppable, and built to last for generations. This brings us to the crucial realization that will begin to transform your relationship with success. The toxic people you see succeeding aren't actually your obstacle. They're your teachers. They're showing you exactly what happens when someone combines incomplete understanding with complete conviction. They're demonstrating the power of certainty, the impact of self-belief, and the force of focused action, all tools that you can use while maintaining your integrity. Think about this. Every time you've watched a toxic person succeed through manipulation, you've actually been given a gift, a clear demonstration of the power of decisive action. Every time you've seen them network their way to the top through shallow connections, you've been shown the value of relationship building. The difference is you have the opportunity to do these things with depth, with integrity, with genuine value to offer. The key is to start seeing success not as a zero-sum game, where toxic people are winning and good people are losing, but as a universal force that responds to certain laws that can be practiced with integrity or with manipulation. The laws themselves are neutral. Gravity doesn't care if you use it to drop a bomb or deliver aid packages. It's the same with the laws of success. Let me share something that happened in a small town in Michigan back in 1992. A local business owner, let's call him David, was known for his integrity and fairness. He ran a successful hardware store that had been in his family for 3 generations. When a major retail chain moved into town, they tried to buy him out. David refused, believing his loyal customers would sustain him. The retail chain's manager, a ruthless strategist, began pricing items below cost, specifically targeting David's best-selling products. Month after month, David watched his customers drift away, drawn by prices he couldn't match. He maintained his principles, refused to cut corners on quality, and kept treating his remaining customers with the same care and attention he always had. Within a year, he was forced to close his doors. The retail chain bought his building for a fraction of its worth. Now, most people would look at this story and see it as proof that toxic people win and good people lose. But they'd be missing the most important part of the story. 5 years later, that retail chain was embroiled in a national scandal over fraudulent practice. The ruthless manager was indicted for embezzlement, and David, he had used his reputation and experience to become a highly sought-after business consultant, helping other small businesses adapt and thrive in changing markets. His income tripled, and more importantly, he was doing deeply fulfilling work that aligned with his values. The lesson here isn't that good people eventually win and bad people eventually lose. That's just another fairy tale. The real lesson is that David succeeded not despite his goodness, but because he learned to channel it strategically. He took what appeared to be a defeat and used it as a stepping stone to something greater. This brings us to a crucial understanding about toxic people and their apparent success. They often succeed because they're willing to take action while good people are still wondering if they have permission. They succeed because they don't wait for consensus or approval. They succeed because they understand that the world doesn't reward good intentions. It rewards good execution. But here's what's fascinating, and this is where your transformation begins to take shape. Everything that makes toxic people temporarily successful can be done from a place of integrity. And when it is, it becomes exponentially more powerful. Think about confidence. Toxic people often display unearned confidence, and it works for them because confidence, even when misplaced, is magnetic. But imagine the power of genuine confidence built on real competence, authentic self-awareness, and true value. That's unstoppable. Consider networking. Toxic people network transactionally, collecting contacts like baseball cards, and it works to a degree. But imagine the power of networking from a place of genuine interest in others, real desire to add value, authentic. That's how you build not just a network, but a community that becomes an unstoppable force. Let me tell you about Janet, a brilliant scientist I met in 2010. She watched for years as her less qualified but more aggressive colleagues got grants, recognition, and opportunities. She was doing groundbreaking work but struggled to get funding because she was too modest in her proposals. Then she had an epiphany. Her humility was actually a form of arrogance. By diminishing her work, she was diminishing its potential impact on the world. She realized that confidently promoting her research wasn't about her ego. It was about ensuring that important work got the resources it needed to help people. Once she reframed self-promotion as service, everything changed. Within 2 years, she had secured more funding than in the previous decade combined. This is what I mean when I say that toxic people can be our teachers. They show us the power of certain tools: confidence, self-promotion, strategic thinking, decisive action. Our job isn't to reject these tools because we've seen them misused. Our job is to reclaim them and use them in service of something greater. When you see a toxic person succeed through manipulation, they're demonstrating that people respond to clear, confident communication. The manipulation part isn't what makes it work, it's the clarity and confidence. You can have those same things while being truthful. When you see them succeed through self-promotion, they're showing that visibility matters. The exaggeration and dishonesty aren't what create the success. It's the willingness to be seen and heard. You can have that. When you see them succeed through aggressive action, they're proving that decisive movement creates momentum. The aggression isn't what generates the results. It's the decision and movement. You can have those while being considerate. This realization liberates us from the false choice between being good and being successful. It's not about choosing between power and principles. It's about understanding that true principles are the ultimate form of power. I met a fascinating man in 1988, a former Wall Street trader who had become a monk. He told me something profound. The most powerful person in any room is the one who has nothing to hide and nothing to prove. Think about that. Toxic people succeed temporarily because they're willing to hide everything and prove anything. But imagine the power of having nothing to hide and nothing to prove. This brings us to a crucial point about why toxic people often appear to succeed more quickly than good people. They're willing to take shortcuts, yes, but more importantly, they're willing to start before they feel ready. They're willing to be seen before they feel perfect. They're willing to claim space before they feel entitled to it. And here's where good people often get stuck. Waiting for permission, waiting for perfection, waiting for someone to recognize and reward their goodness. But what if your goodness isn't something that needs external validation? What if it's actually your source of power? Let me tell you about a moment that changed my understanding forever. It was a rainy evening in Chicago, 1995. I was sitting in a coffee shop watching people hurry past the window when I noticed something remarkable. A woman had dropped her shopping bags and items were scattered across the wet sidewalk. 2 people stopped to help. The first, dressed in expensive business attire, made a show of helping, ensuring others noticed his good deed. The second, a street vendor, quietly gathered items without seeking attention or acknowledgement. The businessman helped for perhaps 30 seconds, made sure people noticed, then hurried away with an air of satisfaction. The street vendor stayed until everything was collected, helped the woman to her car, and returned to his cart without fanfare. Here's what fascinated me. The businessman probably told this story multiple times that day, positioning himself as the hero. The street vendor probably never mentioned it to anyone. This moment perfectly illustrates why we sometimes think toxic people succeed more than good people. They're better at marketing their actions. They understand something crucial that many good people miss. Perception shapes reality. But here's the deeper truth. The street vendor's authentic goodness created a ripple effect he never saw. The woman he helped became a regular customer, brought her friends, and years later, When the city was reviewing street vendor licenses, she wrote a passionate letter that helped save dozens of small businesses. This brings us to a fundamental truth about success and goodness. Impact isn't always immediate or visible. Toxic people often succeed quickly because they're focused on short-term, visible wins. They're playing chess while thinking one move ahead. Good people, often without realizing it, are playing a longer, deeper game. Think about the redwood forests. These magnificent trees can live for thousands of years. But what's truly remarkable is how they grow. Unlike most trees, redwoods don't have deep taproots. Instead, they survive and thrive because their roots spread outward, intertwining with the roots of other redwoods. They support each other, creating an underground network of mutual support that makes the entire forest stronger. This is how authentic goodness works in the world of success. While toxic people are building towers of individual achievement, good people are often building networks of mutual support and genuine value. It might look slower on the surface, but it's infinitely more stable and sustainable. I remember meeting a corporate executive in 2008 who had built his career through aggressive tactics and manipulation. He was proud of how quickly he'd risen to the top, boasting about how he'd outmaneuvered slower, softer competitors. But when the financial crisis hit, something fascinating happened. While he struggled to maintain his position without his usual tactics, his slower, softer competitors thrived because they'd built genuine relationships and real value. This brings us to a crucial understanding about success and toxicity. Toxic people often succeed because they're willing to do what others won't. But here's the twist. Good people can succeed by being willing to do what toxic people can't. Toxic people can't build genuine trust. They can't create real loyalty. They can't inspire authentic collaboration. These are your superpowers, but only if you learn to use them strategically. Me share a powerful truth that most people miss. Being good doesn't mean being nice. Being ethical doesn't mean being passive. Being authentic doesn't mean being transparent to everyone all the time. You can be good and strategic. You can be ethical and powerful. You can be authentic and selective about what you share. Consider the martial art of Aikido. It's based on the principle of using an attacker's energy against them while maintaining your own balance and integrity. The most powerful Aikido masters don't meet force with force. We redirect it. This is how good people can approach success in a world where toxic behavior seems to win. When a toxic person tries to take credit for your work, don't fight them directly. Instead, document everything and build relationships with key decision makers before you need them. When they try to undermine you, don't stoop to their level. Instead, focus on making your value so obvious it can't be ignored. This brings us to another crucial insight. Toxic people succeed partly because they understand something that many good people don't. The power of intention. They wake up each morning with a clear intention to advance their interests. They move through the world looking for opportunities to gain advantage. They're strategic about every interaction. Now imagine applying that same level of intention and strategy to creating value and building genuine relationships. Imagine approaching each day with the clear intention of advancing not just your interests, but the interests of everyone you interact with. Imagine being strategic about how you can create win-win situations. I once worked with a woman named Grace who transformed her entire industry this way. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, a field known for aggressive tactics and questionable ethics. Instead of following the standard playbook of pushing products on doctors, she spent time understanding their patients' needs. She built relationships based on trust and mutual benefit. Her competitors thought she was naive. But here's what happened. While they were focused on short-term sales targets, she was building a network of doctors who trusted her completely. When new products came out, these doctors came to her first because they knew she'd give them honest feedback. When regulations changed, they sought her advice because they knew she had their patients' interests at heart. Within 5 years, she wasn't just outperforming her toxic competitors. She was operating in a different league entirely. They were still playing the game of quarterly sales targets while she was transforming how doctors and pharmaceutical companies could work together ethically and effectively. The success of toxic people often looks bigger than it is because it's built on flash rather than substance. It's like a movie set, impressive from the front, but walk around back and you'll see it's just props held up by temporary supports. Real success, built on genuine value and authentic relationships, might look less impressive at first glance, but it's built to last. Think about the difference between a peacock and an eagle. The peacock gets attention with its showy display, but it can't soar. The eagle might look plain in comparison, but it can rise above storms and see opportunities others miss. Toxic people are often peacocks, masters of display, but limited in their actual capabilities. Good people who learn to be strategic can be eagles. Less flashy, perhaps, but capable of achieving heights that peacocks can only dream of. Let me share something that happened in a small manufacturing company in Ohio back in 2002. Linda, a brilliant engineer, had developed a revolutionary process that could cut production costs by 30% while improving quality. Her toxic supervisor, Tom, immediately recognized the value of her innovation. Instead of acknowledging her contribution, he presented it to senior management as his own idea. Now, here's where most good people make a crucial mistake. They focus on the injustice rather than the opportunity. Linda did something different. Instead of fighting Tom directly or becoming bitter, she documented everything meticulously and focused on implementing her innovation flawlessly. True knew something most good people follow. It's ironies. Truth has a persistence that lies can't match. Now, within 6 months, when implementation challenges arose, it became clear who really understood the innovation. Senior management started coming directly to Linda for answers. Tom's facade began to crack. By year's end, Linda was heading her own division, while Tom had been laterally moved to a position where he could do less damage. This story illuminates something crucial about the success of toxic people. It's often built on something real, just not something they created. They succeed because they're good at recognizing and capturing value even if they can't create it themselves. This is actually good news for people of integrity because it means the fundamental law of value creation is on your side. Think about this. In nature, there are 2 basic strategies for survival. You can be a producer or a consumer. Toxic people are excellent consumers. They spot value, capture it, and use it for their advantage. But producers, those who can actually create value, will always have a fundamental advantage in the long run. I remember sitting with a group of successful business leaders in 2007, discussing what made their companies resilient during tough times. The most successful among them said something profound. In my 40 years in business, I've noticed that companies run by toxic leaders can succeed in good times, but they almost always fail in bad times. Why? Because when things get tough, not just compliance, you need innovation, not just execution. You need people willing to go the extra mile because they believe in what they're doing, not just because they're afraid. This brings us to a crucial understanding about why toxic people often appear to succeed more quickly. They're playing a simpler game. They don't need to build real trust, just the appearance of trustworthiness. They don't need to create real value, just capture and repackage existing value. They don't need to develop people, just use them effectively. But here's the opportunity hidden in plain sight. While toxic people are succeeding through shortcuts, you can be building something they can't copy. While they're cultivating fear, you can be cultivating loyalty. While they're forcing compliance, you can be inspiring commitment. While they're taking value, you can be creating it. Let me tell you about Marcus, a software developer I met in 2013. He watched for years as his more aggressive colleagues got promoted over him. They would rush out half-finished products, take credit for team efforts, and throw others under the bus when things went wrong. Marcus, meanwhile, focused on building reliable code, mentoring junior developers, and creating documentation that made everyone's job easier. For 3 years, it seemed like his approach was getting him nowhere. His toxic colleagues were getting promotions and bonuses while he remained in the same position. But he was building something they couldn't see. A reputation for reliability and a network of skilled developers who trusted him completely. When a major project went catastrophically wrong under one of his toxic colleagues, guess who management turned to for the rescue? Marcus not only saved the project, but transformed how the entire department operated. Within a year, he was running his own division, implementing practices that made the whole organization more effective and ethical. This illustrates another crucial truth about success and toxicity. Toxic people often succeed by creating problems they can then solve dramatically. Good people succeed by preventing problems from occurring in the first place. Guess which approach builds more sustainable success? Think about it like this. Toxic people are like pyromaniac firefighters. They create crises so they can be heroes solving them. Their success is real. They really do put out fires, but it's built on a foundation of manufactured chaos. Good people who learn to be strategic are like master architects, designing buildings that are naturally fire-resistant. It's less dramatic, but infinitely more valuable. This brings us to something most people miss about toxic success. It requires constant energy to maintain. Like a cyclist using performance-enhancing drugs, toxic people have to keep upping the ante to maintain their advantage. They have to keep manufacturing crises, keep manipulating perceptions, keep finding new people to exploit. Meanwhile, a success built on genuine value creation becomes easier over time. Like a snowball rolling downhill, it gains size and momentum naturally. Each genuine relationship builds trust that makes the next relationship easier to build. Each real solution creates credibility that makes the next project easier to secure. Each authentic achievement builds a foundation for greater achievements. I once met a fascinating woman who had transformed her family's small cleaning business into a national corporation. When I asked her secret, she said something I'll never forget. Everyone in our industry was focused on getting clients. I focused on keeping them. Everyone was trying to maximize short-term profit. I focused on maximizing long-term relationships. Everyone was trying to grow fast. I focused on growing strong. It took longer to get started. But once we got moving, no one could catch us. This is the paradox that toxic people don't understand. The shortest path to success often isn't the fastest path to sustainable success. They're playing a game of sprint, while real success is a marathon. But here's what's fascinating. Once you build momentum through genuine value creation, you can often achieve in months what takes toxic people years of constant manipulation to maintain. Let me share one final story that brings all of this together. In 1997, I spent time studying 2 competing restaurants in a small coastal town. Both opened around the same time, both serving similar cuisine. One was run by Richard, known for his aggressive business tactics and manipulation of staff and support. The other was run by Maria, who built her business on genuine relationships and quality. For the first 2 years, Richard's restaurant was the talk of the town. He'd mastered the art of creating buzz, cutting corners in ways customers couldn't see, and maximizing short-term profit. His restaurant was featured in local magazines, and he proudly displayed awards. He'd essentially bought through aggressive networking. Maria's restaurant grew more slowly, building a loyal customer base through consistent quality and genuine care. By year 3, something interesting started happening. Richard's staff turnover was constant, forcing him to spend more and more time training new people. Suppliers, tired of his aggressive negotiating tactics, started requiring payment upfront. Long-term customers began noticing the inconsistent quality and service. Meanwhile, Maria's restaurant had developed a stable team of skilled staff who genuinely cared about their work. Her suppliers gave her preferential treatment and early access to the best ingredients. Her customers had become advocates, bringing friends and family. By year 5, Richard's restaurant was struggling despite looking successful on the surface. Maria's restaurant had become an institution, with people driving from other cities just to experience it. The success looked slower at first, but proved unstoppable once it gained momentum. This story encapsulates everything we've discussed today about why toxic people appear to succeed more than good people. They often win the first lap because they're willing to take shortcuts. But life isn't a sprint. It's a marathon with multiple laps. And with each lap, the fundamental advantages of authentic value creation become more apparent. So where does this leave us? What's the actionable wisdom we can take from understanding why toxic people seem to succeed more than good people? Let me share with you the 5 eternal truths I've discovered through years of studying this phenomenon. First, understand that your goodness isn't your weakness. It's your superpower, but only if you learn to use it strategically. Stop waiting for the world to reward your goodness and start using it as a foundation for strategic action. Second, realize that toxic success and real success often look the same from the outside but feel completely different from the inside. Don't be fooled by appearances. The toxic person with the corner office, an impressive title, might be living in constant fear of exposure, while the person quietly building something genuine might be experiencing deep fulfillment. Third, recognize that toxic people aren't actually succeeding more. They're just succeeding more visibly in the short term. They're better at marketing smaller wins while you might be quietly building something exponentially more valuable. Fourth, understand that everything toxic people do well. Commanding attention, taking action, seizing opportunities can be done with integrity. Don't reject the tools of success because you've seen them misused. Reclaim them and use them in service of something greater. Finally, most importantly, realize that the game toxic people are winning isn't the game you want to win. They're winning at accumulating power, but losing at creating value. They're winning at commanding attention, but losing at earning respect. They're winning at gaining control, but losing at building trust. As we wrap up our time together, I want you to really hear this. The success you see toxic people achieving is real, but it's limited. It's like building a house on sand, impressive until the tide comes in. You have the opportunity to build something more lasting, something that becomes stronger over time rather than... Remember that street vendor from the beginning of our talk? I checked back 10 years later. The businessman who made a show of helping that woman, nobody remembered his name, but the street vendor had become a beloved fixture in his community, had put 3 kids through college, and had helped dozens of other vendors get their starts. His success wasn't flashier than the businessman's, but it was deeper, richer, and ultimately more real. You are not here to compete with toxic people on their terms. You are here to redefine success on your terms. You are not here to win their game. You're here to change the game entirely. And when you do that, when you fully step into your power as a creator of genuine value, you'll discover that their version of success was always too small for you anyway. The world doesn't need more toxic success stories. It needs people who understand that real success isn't about what you can take, but what you can create. It needs people who know that true power isn't about control, but about contribution. It needs people who realize that lasting success isn't built on manipulation, but on genuine value creation. You are those people. And your time is now. The question isn't whether toxic people succeed more than good people. The real question is, what kind of success are you here to create? Because when you answer that question honestly, when you commit to building success on a foundation of genuine value creation, you tap into a power that toxic people can't even imagine. Remember, the world is waiting for the unique contribution that only you can make. Don't let the apparent success of toxic people distract you from your deeper purpose. Your goodness isn't your weakness. It's your greatest strength. Use it wisely, use it strategically, and use it to create the kind of success that makes the world better, not just bigger. The choice is yours, and I believe in the choice you'll make.